We have some miscellaneous laws here in Deuteronomy, and sometimes you can really get confused by this myriad of detailed legislation that is the Mosaic Law, and yet there are some unifying principles if you think about it. No one shall take a mill or an upper millstone in pledge, for that would be taking a life in pledge. In other words, you would be taking someone's livelihood. A pledge is if you lend somebody money and you say, well, to be sure that I get this money back from you, I need a pledge or collateral of some sort. Well, if you take their millstone, they can't make a living, they can't grind meal. And so it would be like taking somebody's business and owning it as collateral. Or you lend somebody money and you move into their house because the house is the pledge and you kick them out. You can't do that. So fairness is one of these things. Guard against an outbreak of leprous skin disease by being very careful. You shall carefully observe whatever the Levitical priests instruct you, just as I have commanded them. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on your journey out of Egypt. Remember, Miriam is struck with leprosy and then cured, but she has to spend 7 days outside of camp. So this isn't just looking at leprosy as a symbol for sin, which it often is. It's also a hygienic rule. Be careful if there's an outbreak of leprosy among you. And then if you go to take, when you make your neighbor a loan of any kind, don't go into the house to take his pledge. Wait outside. In other words, don't be greedy. Don't force yourself upon these people. You shall not withhold the wages of poor and needy laborers, whether other Israelites or aliens, Gentiles who reside in your land or in your towns. Don't take advantage of your workers, especially if they're poor and needy. You shall pay them their wages daily before sunset, because if they're poor, they need money every day so that they can eat. Okay? So you sort of see this. Also, parents shall not be put to death for their children, nor children for their parents. Only for their own crimes may persons be put to death. So we're seeing a unifying principle behind some of these laws. But this is also quite interesting. You shall not deprive a resident alien or an orphan of justice. You shall not take a widow's garment in pledge. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you to do this. Have respect for the strangers, the resident aliens, and the orphans and the widows. Why? Because you yourself were a slave in Egypt. And this applies to the descendants. The Jews think of themselves as having been slaves in Egypt, even to this day, and those who are observant honor the poor and the widows and the aliens among them. And then don't glean everything from your crops. Leave some for the poor homeless people who will be passing through. And that's actually down here. Well, that's both of those. So at any rate, it's not just a whole bunch of confusing regulations. The principles behind these laws tend to be that of justice and mercy. Now, when we read about Barabbas in the reading from Matthew, what interests me about that is these people are fulfilling prophecy without knowing it or intending it, even through their sins, so that they have the choice. Pilate says, should I release Barabbas, this insurgent, this sinner, this despicable character, or Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One? The crowd is stirred up to demand Barabbas, and Jesus then is crucified. But in a way, that fulfills the mission of Christ. We are freed, as the Jews were freed from Egypt. So we are freed from sin and condemnation, in the same way that Barabbas was freed and Jesus died in his place. Jesus literally dies in place of Barabbas, who is freed. He didn't just die for Barabbas, he died for all of us. But Barabbas stands for all miserable, condemned sinners. We are let free when the just one among us dies for our sins.